Do this. Tweet. Here we are. Face to face. A couple of silver spoons. I'm gonna give people a second to get here. Completely forgot about this stream. Now you get to watch me pour water. It's enthralling. Enthralling stuff. Got my Kool-Aid. I'm gonna talk about what happens in North Korea and get it straight. Because everyone was blowing up my Twitter yesterday and I was getting ornery, I think they say, in the Midwest. Shiny and new. Want to update you guys about the streams and so on and so forth. Going forward, I am going to be doing that movie night stuff and having other people on here. That's going to happen probably this weekend. You can keep up to date on that at malice.locals.com. I haven't sat down with OBS and Zoom to do it. It looks extremely easy, even by my but I'm too old to learn new technology boomer standards. So I talked about this on Nightshade today, but I'm going to go into it at length here for everyone so you guys can be informed, because North Korea is a very complicated issue with a great deal of history, and the vast majority of people who are opining on it are clueless. I've been looking forward to this. Well, thank you, Alex. That is appreciated. By the way, I have another question that I put on my locals, and this is just the complete opposite of North Korea, and it's just very trashy. I'll ask that at the end. Okay. So, hold on, let me get a sip. North Korea's first woman supreme leader already groomed by the media during the Olympics. Yeah. I gotta tell you, one of the things I don't like, and the joke writes itself because, well, wouldn't you be the first one, is when people who don't know what they're talking about feel the need to run their mouths, which is my job, to be one of those people. But I get paid for it. And a lot of times you can understand why. Like if I'm at a party, remember those? I don't. If I'm at a party and I meet people, oh, what do you do? I used to say I'm an author. And they'd be like, oh, what kind of books do you write? I love that idea also. That's literally the sentence they, like, I would say 65% of people say, as if, like, most authors have, like, 50 books to their name. It's oh, yeah, usually I'm writing murder. It's just really kind of funny, but it also shows how rare it is to actually meet an author. And when I very much hesitate to, this has happened far less now that the new right has come out and I've become more of a name. It is when I would tell them I'm doing a book, I did a book on North Korea, they would have this compulsion. I got to figure out how this camera focuses, because this is a fancy camera that I got gifted by, thank you so much, Randy, and I don't know how to get it. I think it's looking at the CDs, and it's got to be looking at here. So I'll figure it out. So, when I would say North Korea, they would take this as a need to basically tell me everything they know about North Korea. Or like, oh, I heard blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, if someone wrote the book on it, and especially a subject as arcane as this, there's no expectation on you to know anything about it, right? And I think there is an expectation, contradicting myself, in how it's culturally presented, because we're taught, starting from elementary school, at least I was, in 5th grade, I remember this, that, like, it's incumbent on all of us to keep up on current events, right? You have current events homework. And if you don't have current events, you got to figure out, keep up on track. Current events is, real a lie, because North Korea, thankfully, has become much more of a household name. Eritrea, which is Africa's version of North Korea, is not. And, like, what's Eritrea? Maybe people have heard of it, right? So I wanted to break down the North Korea. So people kept tweeting at me. And first of all, this does bother me. If you know someone is a North Korea person, hey, Michael, tell Joy, hey. I guess I gotta wink at her. Joy's the best. Joy Morin. And Greg's the best, too. These are just facts. And your fish tank is sick, Greg. It's got parasites. That was fun when I was tweeting at Petco. I'm like, hey, do you have that medicine? My grandma's got a big cough. And they're like, oh, we do not sell that medicine. I'm like, well, she's also got ick. Does chelated copper work on her too? Ick is a fish parasite. You had to be there underwater. So the thing that annoyed me is if you know someone is like the North Korea person or any issue where there's very few experts, just look at their page. Because the odds are very high they've opined on it. Like, if I'm an hour into this tweet storm, be like, hey, what do you think's going to happen? You don't have to ask. You could just look. And I really resent when people, because this is just not my psychology, so I'm being unreasonable to some extent. If there's a question that can easily be determined the answer to, look it up. Don't ask someone. And the same way, like, if I have a problem, instead of calling tech support or whatever, I'm like, let me try for literally 30 seconds to see if I can figure it out. And inevitably, it's true. Someone's getting annoyed at me because I was being very cunty to him. Because he's like, oh, how was Kim Jong-nam killed? Was it like a fake suicide? We know. It's video. It was discussed at length. And even if there wasn't video, look it up. You don't need private tutoring. Based on my high school lesson on Kim George VI, clearly Kim Jong-un's sister will be the next president of North Korea. Yeah. And the other thing is there's this great metaphor. I used this today when I was on Stu Berger's show, The World According to Stu on The Blaze. Whatever happened to Leopold and Loeb? Don't ever doubt me. The point I made is it's kind of like this metaphor of there's like it's night out, there's a street light, and you're looking for your keys, and you assume they're going to be there because that's the only place you can see, right? It's this weird kind of psychology. It's like, well, I know one person in North Korea, so based on my in-depth analysis of having one data point and no information, it's probably going to be her. It's like, what the... And I said this on Stu. I said, this is like someone looking at America and being like, you know what I think? You know, this is my sophisticated, hot, international world affairs take. If Trump gets taken out, it's probably going to be Melania. Because she's smarter than she lets on. And it's like, yeah, I think Melania is smarter than she lets on. I think you're a lot dumber than you realize. The same saying you're an author scenario happens when you tell someone you're a historian. It's cringe. I don't think they know what to do. I don't think they know what to do. So it's I don't think it's cringe because it's just like awkward, I guess cringe means awkward, but not in the same way. I don't feel embarrassed for the person. It's just kind of an uncomfortable situation. So let's break down what happens in North Korea. And this is the other thing. Like, people would be like, okay, well, in that case, what happens after that? The thing that we have in the States, in the West, the common law, and I'm gonna sing its praises and as an anarchist because there's many great things to the common law. The process is very clear and codified. Now, there are many such cases where people try to work around it and try to tweak it and try to end run it and they rewrite the definition of words to, make it not happen. But the process is laid out explicitly. We all know it's not ambiguous. If something happens to President Trump, Mike Pence becomes president. There's no question. There's no ambiguity. And if both of them, it becomes Pelosi. And in fact, there's such a huge order of succession, as many of you know, that when the president gives a State of the Union, there's one member of his cabinet who gets taken to a secure location in case, like, the House gets nuked. Or is it the Senate chamber where he delivers? No, it's the House because Pelosi's in charge. So this is very known. It's not a question, right? Thanks for your stream the other day. I got the Audible of The Warrior Cop. I'll listen to it when I'm done with Cherno's book on Hamilton. Those are two must-reads back to back. You are in a world of heaven. You're a lucky person. Great work. Both of these great books. Bradley Balco is a little TDS and he unfollowed me, but when you're someone who has done so much for so good, you could have complete brazen contempt and hatred for me, which he does not at all, and really just really personally have animus toward me, and all is forgiven. You are a hero among heroes. Just no question in my perspective. I think he is amazing, and I think it's so useful. But that's the whole Duncan Lem situation. I'm gonna get into that a little bit. Well, I talked about it already. It's been, I gotta tell you, and with these live streams, it's a bit of a ramble. It's been a very intense 48 hours for me, because Sunday, breaking or giving signal boost to the whole Duncan Lem story. Why are they good back to back in particular? They're not. It's just very rare that you're going to have a chance to read so many high quality books close to each other, because statistically, most books aren't like 10 out of 10 like both of those are. Those are two of my like absolute must read books. So so it was the Duncan Lem thing on Sunday, and then this North Korea thing happened last night. I still managed to get it working in at my house miraculously. So let's break it down. Then this is the book in North Korea, which most of you already know. Dear reader, blah, blah, blah. It's great. I love it. 10 stars. So we have a common law. North Korea, Ayn Rand, the vampire novelist, talks about this in one of her essays, that these countries don't have law. You don't know what's going to happen to you. It's not like there's any kind of rights. It's just the law is whatever the person in power decides to do to you at that moment. Now, in a sense, we have a similarity here, that if you are caught up by the state, you're in a lot of trouble. But there are checks and balances, because there's the other part of the state. So it does mitigate it to some extent. So and the other thing that really bothers me is when this is a very egotistical point of view, as opposed to egoism, which is the philosophical approach. Egotism is the premise that you're at the center of the universe, right? Not in a moral sense, but like in a metaphysical sense, like everything revolves around you. It doesn't. I have a list of all the books I've heard you recommend. Oprah's book club is banal. Malice recommends is where it's at. Wow, that is a huge compliment. For the rest of you who are interested, every book I read, I give it a star rating on goodreads.com. And the 5-star ones are the ones which are like, I will recommend to everyone. 4-star are like significantly above average, commendable. 3 stars are like, okay, yeah, it's worth reading. I don't regret this. 2 are like, this wasn't that good. And 1 is like, oh God, this was tough. This was tough to get through. So a lot of times, like an old book that, has like historical value and is an interesting first source, I'll give it 2 stars, because like, okay, this was hard to read, but you get a lot of information out of it. So that's kind of my code. And if I also give a little review to all the supporters on malice.locals.com, I'll take the picture when I read a book and just give it a little blurb of what I thought about it. So again, in North Korea, there's no law. There is it's not law the way you and I think of it at all. And it's not like, here's the other thing, they have an intranet, right? It's not like I can go on my computer, they don't have electricity, and go to like DPRKpedia and be like, what happens if Kim Il-sung dies? Because that's the voice they all have, apparently. They're watching your searches, first of all. You're not there to ask questions as a member of North Korea, because that is challenging the authorities. This is something Westerners Americans especially, have a hard time grasping, because we tend to take a lot of things for granted. There's this joke that Reagan and Gorbachev had. I've told it before. It's a pretty famous joke. And it also is kind of telling, and this is kind of what helped bring down the end of the Soviet Union, because humor is a very great mechanism for allowing truths to be spoken. And when the head of Russia is making this joke and he's admitting the truth at the base of his humor, at some point he's like, yeah, this is kind of screwed up. And the joke is, this guy, an American and Russian are arguing over which country's better. And the American is saying, I'm better, America's better. Russia's saying, Russia's better. And America goes, are you kidding me? I could go to the Oval Office, bang on the Resolute desk and say, the president is doing a terrible job, and nothing will happen to me. He goes, that's not, Russian goes, I guess that's true, I could do that. I could go to the Kremlin, bang on Gorbachev's desk, and say the president's doing a terrible job. So the joke, is like, yeah, in Russia you could criticize America, but you are not criticizing the state. Now, toward the Gorbachev era, it got a lot better, but this is not, there's none of this. You do not have that. And North Korea is especially bad, even by these dictatorial standards, because according to the great leader Kim Il-sung, 3 generations of your family are going to be punished for your crimes. It's family punishment. It's not individual rights. And this is part of why I cringe when I hear conservatives who identify as individuals say the family is the basic unit of society. Unit means, and I mentioned this in the book, unit means that which cannot be subdivided, right? So if you're saying a family can't be subdivided further into individuals, you're saying, yeah, family punishment makes sense, and it does not make sense. And I know that that's not what their implication is, what they intend, but that is logically the inevitable implication of what they are saying. Okay, so as I mentioned in my tweet storm, North Korea has a constitution, and this was a thing that happened as a consequence of the Cold War. All the second world, and for those who don't know, first world is us, second world is the communist countries, third world is like shithole countries, haha. But like the second world refers to like North Korea, the former Soviet Union, Hungary, all those. That would be the second world, the Eastern Bloc, the Warsaw Pact, excuse me. Although I don't think North Korea was a signatory. But they have a constitution which allows freedom of religion and all this other good stuff, but it's of no relevance whatsoever. Just like they have elections that are of no relevance whatsoever. And what'll happen is they have something called, and I'll pull it out. The thing what I tried to do with this book and succeeded to this extent is I wanted to have it be comprehensive, which was very hard to get into one book. But any kind of major North Korean document that they refer to a lot, I wanted to be in here and discussed. So you really get understanding, like if we were writing a book about America, I would have the Declaration, I'd have the Emancipation Proclamation, I'd have the Constitution, things like this. But having it being in the first person narrator, having it be someone speaking, it was kind of tough to do that because you don't just insert the Constitution, and the Constitution is quite long. Just joined, but want to say thanks for explaining all this to us simpletons. Listen, no simpleton's going to be able to follow this, so that statement is not accurate. Okay, so the thing that Americans don't understand or appreciate, and this was news to me, I was very shocked to learn this, is that a lot of the things that we regard as horrifying they're proud of. So we think that, like, they're doing something screwed up and they're going to pretend it's not happening. And some of that is true as I make those distinctions in the book. But a lot of it, they're like, no. We're proud of this. We're doing it right. You're doing it wrong. And one example of this is there was a video I saw recently on YouTube. I can't remember where. I apologize. And there was a guy. Oh, this is what it was. Did Kim #1 get killed off because he wanted unified Korea? Kim #1 was Kim Il-sung, the great leader. He died in 1994 of natural causes. They all wanted to unify Korea. Conservatives also overlooked the importance of extended family. Yeah, me and Dave Smith went about this at length. The conservative claim that the nuclear family is the norm throughout the world in history is not true. And even now is not true. And the extended family is a great insurance model against dad being a drunk or an uncle who's touchy or something like that. My dad was in the picture. My uncle's the main reason I'm a happy marriage today. Because Dave pointed this out. No, someone pointed out on Twitter, and I apologize for not remembering who it was, that this was historically a Catholic versus Protestant thing. That the Catholics were the big extended families, and the Protestants were like, no. Like, so this is a lot of low-key, what would now be called racism. So one of the things that the last page in Dear Reader floored me. Yeah, I cried writing that. It's one of the few occasions a book literally gave me the chills. Thank you for your service. Yeah, don't spoil anything, Sean. But when you read that page and then you look at the cover again, from Not Twisted Lily, what happened to kill it? Yeah, it's a great fragrance store in Brooklyn. I don't know what happened. It makes me very, very, very sad, Alex. Yeah. One of the things that I think is very rare in a book, or in any work of art, and I'm using the word art in a broad sense, not in the sense of fine art, is that when you consume it, whether a movie, painting, music, and then you look at something you just looked at 5 minutes ago, you're looking at it differently, that it really just changes your perception and your thinking. I think this is art at its finest. And I know, and this is not a big boast, because I knew where people were coming from, I knew that after reading this book, and because it happened to me, and it's inevitable, because no matter how bad you think North Korea is, we know what concentration camps are, so they're horrific, but we kind of have an understanding what they are. when you realize if you got rid of the concentration camps, what else the people are going through, that you're like, there's so many layers of depravity here. You're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, like every week you have to get together in front of your school and say what you did wrong and then say what you saw other people do wrong in the whole country all the time. What? They say a presidential nominee should choose a vice president who makes him look good in contrast. I already made that meme, Tricky Rick. Given that Biden has said he's choosing a woman, do you think he'll choose Cherry Shivo? I made that meme. How do I post a picture here? Shoot, can I post a picture? I can't post a picture. It's literally on my desktop right now of Terry Schiavo, a Biden meme. And one of the things that they have is what they call the monolithic ideological system. So for us, we would recoil in horror at the idea of everyone in the country thinking the same way. This is nightmarish to us. It's Orwell. It's all these dystopian movies, the Borg. And they're like, no, this is great. Everyone in this country thinks the same as the great leader Kim Il-sung. What a great man and what a unified, strong nation we are. And it's like, oh my God, you're not ashamed that you're like breaking everyone into losing their individuality. You're proud of it. And one of them is, as I was saying, the principles of the monolithic ideological system, which is, and I'll let me find it right here. I just had it, and I lost it. Is that it? Okay, the 10 great principles of the monolithic ideological system. Here, like number 4. I wrote "thou shalt." That's not how it is in the original Korean, but it's not that far off because when one of the leaders speaks in writing, they boldface his name and make the font bigger. Number 4, thou shalt accept the great leader Kim Il-sung's revolutionary idea. By the way, this was not public knowledge outside of North Korea for a long time. So they had the Constitution, they didn't know about, people didn't know about this, then it kind of leaked, and it's like, oh, fuck. Thou shalt accept the great leader Kim Il-sung's revolutionary ideology as your belief, and follow the great leader's instructions as your cause. Number 4. Number 5. Thou shalt execute the great leader Kim Il-sung's instructions absolutely and without condition. So whatever he says, you're going to do it immediately and without questions. No exceptions. Everything. And number 10 is the great revolutionary accomplishments begun by the great leader Kim Il-sung shall be inherited and perfected by generation upon generation until the end. So this is what is very important. So they have there was a power struggle and behind the scenes during the late 60s and early 70s over who's going to take over for the great leader Kim Il-sung. By that point, he was somewhat unique no, he wasn't unique, but he was the forefront of, after Khrushchev gave his secret speech in, it was a 53, 56, when Stalin died and Khrushchev gave this speech, and he was like, guys, this was really screwed up what we were doing. We're communists. Having this personality cult around one person, Stalin, this is not what we're about, and the consequences are really bad. And since Russia or the USSR was the lodestar for this whole kind of communist empire, a lot of people, that gave them permission to be like, yeah, let's kind of let's liberalize a little. This is not, we don't need to be living in constant terror. We should just have maybe 12 hours a day of terror. But North Korea went the other way. They kept doubling down and step by step. Again, I always make this point. This didn't happen overnight. It was very methodical, where the great leader Kim Il-sung purged and consolidated his hold on power, including sending anyone who studied abroad to the camps, because he didn't want people speaking other languages or knowing of the outside world. It was, and again, just you'll read this in the book. Anyway, so there's a struggle. You can't. Someone asked, well, what happens when the great leader Kim Il-sung dies? One of the party dignitaries. They either send him to the camps or the countryside, because you're not to even bring that up. Can you imagine? It's like this. Here's a good example for us to be able to wrap our heads around. Like if you're playing with someone and just had a baby, and you ask them, what would you do if she died? They would look at you like, what is wrong with you? Right? So in a way, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, what are we going to do when you die? It's like, How dare you even suggest that thing? Like, oh my God, the horror. This is the great leader. Our entire lives are here as a function of his greatness. What is. You're a monster. So there's a power struggle behind the scenes, or who the successor. It was either going to be Kim Il Sung's brother or his son Kim Jong Il. Kim Jong Il won out. The uncle Kim Pyong Il, I believe his name is, got still like the ambassador to like Prague, to Czech Republic. He's treated very well, or Poland, one of those. And when that was announced, eventually, I'm just kind of narrowing it down. This was a huge deal in communist circles. The idea that you can pass on the leadership to your son was regarded as complete anathema. Even the Yank Devils don't have that. Like, I mean, this like, of all like the leftist attacks on millionaires and the wealthy, the premise that like I'm rich and as a result of this my son is going to be born a millionaire without having accomplished anything. Of all the arguments, that's one where you could wrap your head around. Like, yeah, you could say it's his property, it's his money, but it's like, yeah, this is a huge advantage for this kid, no question. Since this is a most important live stream, Michael does not see non-super chat. If you ask a question, make it a super chat, Greg. Yes, thank you, sir. We got another one. Hold on. 1K on here. Thanks for covering this important issue. My pleasure, Chris. This is obviously something that means a lot to me. Broke 1,000 for the first time. Kind of everyone pony up. I'm glad to do this for free. I mean, I very, very, very much appreciate the support, but this is something that obviously very important. What's the fight between the Trotskyists and the Stalinists? They seem to hate each other, much like the infighting on something you write. That is a very valid, very truthful thing, and I cannot get into it. There's a lot there, Shauna. A lot there. So, and that's the other thing. I don't remember if it's a shadow box that I have in here. That question about like, wait a minute, how is it that we're going to have a son take over for the father? They take it on head on. They're like, oh, here we go. The successorship question. This is what I was shocked when I was reading the North Korea propaganda. They address virtually every issue they acknowledge. Because it's weird, because you would think that the people in North Korea aren't aware of some of this foreign criticism. The people writing these books or whatever, and they are very aware, and they go into it at length. So this is what they say. They say that the enemies of the DPRK criticized President Kim Il-sung for allegedly establishing a hereditary monarchy, a misconception that many people unfortunately still believe. Okay? So they're saying a hereditary monarchy is in a feudal system, right? Okay. And here are why it was correct that Kim Jong-il was the successor, okay, in their words. Because this is, when I say 100% truths in quotes, this is all sourced from either North Korean literature or, Western sources to kind of supplement it. But I didn't make up things in here. This is all grounded in something, even if that something is some ridiculous fairy tales in North Korea. First and foremost, my loyalty to President Kim Il-sung was thorough, sincere, enthusiastic, lofty, and unrivaled. Okay. Second, my understanding of the great leader's thought was unsurpassed. Third, I was able to mobilize the popular masses due to my leadership ability. Again, they also made out that Kim Jong-il is this exceptional, awesome guy. Finally, I had a strong sense of revolutionary duty that was expressed in my love for the people. All these characteristics demanded that I be chosen as successor to the great cause of Juche. So they're saying it's not that he inherited it, it's that he earned it despite being the son of the great leader Kim Il-sung. So behind the scenes, by all accounts, Kim Jong-il started taking over more and more of the country, telling his dad, who he had convinced was the greatest person ever, oh, you don't need to worry about that, it's getting taken care of. It's very clear that the great leader Kim Il-sung cared a lot more about the people of North Korea than Kim Jong-il did. So, like, when things started going bad, Kim Il-sung was like, yo, are they not getting enough food? And Kim Jong-il's like, Dad, don't you worry about it, I got it covered. So that's very much what's happening. And at a certain point, it was like Kim Il-sung was like, I don't know if I have the capacity to turn this ship around. Is Donald J. Trump's relationship with North Korea a play against China? No, I think he genuinely cares. I think he genuinely cares that about the people there. and about the concentration camps and so on and so forth. I don't think that's much to say. Do you think it's possible we'll see the reunification of North Korea within the next 30 years? Yes. Very, 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 very possible. Should they? I don't know about should. I just want them to get food, the internet, passports, and not have to worry about concentration camps and human rights abuses. That's it. If they have to be like at a China level, I don't care. Like, my work's done. Did Tulsi's support for Biden change your mind again? Increase your mind against her? No. I talked about this with Dave Smith. I can see why she did it. I know she reached out to Bernie and Bernie rebuffed her. So at a certain point, you're going to support the nominee. But Ron Paul didn't do that, so I don't know. Just bought a G.I. Joe. That was my favorite from my childhood thanks to He-Man tweets last week. Felt great, thank you. Hell yeah, isn't that great? Just buy yourself your favorite childhood toy and there you go, right here. I never got a chance to get Crasher in white when I was a kid. It's a little yellowed. I got as an adult over the years, but now I have it, and now you can look at it and be like, oh, I always want this as a kid. It was like $8 or $20. Who the hell knows? Ugh, it's stuck. All right. I guess this will never be I did it yesterday. It was fine. All right, there she is. There, come on, girl. There she is. We almost got her. I'm gonna break it. I'll just get a new one. There it is. Crasher. She's usually in black. Why is it so stuck? Because probably because 30 years old. That's why. Okay, so the thing about North Korea is there's no gossip columns. These people aren't treated like human beings. So it was still during Kim Jong-il's, and I talk about this in my book, Kim Jong-il married a woman who had a low sungbun, right? She was born overseas, I believe, was the issue. Or no, she was born in the South. Or one of them, too. Or Japan. I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, the point is sungbun is your social credit score. And it determines, like, basically everything about your life. And you're not told what it is, but it's kind of like you can deduce it. So the leader can't be marrying someone without the highest possible sungbun, which they have to have all these characteristics, including some which are immutable, like where you're born. And so he had this movie star wife, and he had Kim Jong-nam with her. They were raised in a compound. No one knew about them, right? Including the great leader Kim Il-sung. My friend Phil, it was funny because someone I put up this cute. I'm not even gonna say. My friend Phil made the point. He goes, "Wow, I didn't. You know, like sometimes when you write something, you have this great idea that's in it, and you don't realize you put it in there. And then hold on, I think the camera's blurry. And then someone else points it out, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that, but that's true. Phil points out North Korea is even a prison for the leaders in many cases, and he's right. In this case, like Kim Jong-il married this woman. He couldn't tell Kim Il-sung. He couldn't make it public. They were raised in a compound. Kim Jong-nam and the woman, Kim Hyung-ri, Kim Sung. I always get their names confused. It doesn't matter. It's in here. Wait, hold on. And a lot of these Kim Hi-rim. That's the other thing is I don't know if she changed her name. I don't ever have to say them out loud usually. I think I missed. Transformers were my gem in college. I was a GoBots guy because we were poor. So the great leader Kim Il-sung, North Korea, they marry young, and carry on the fair lane. Love you, screw anti-Semitic guy on Twitter. Oh, here's the other thing that's funny is that, I obviously talked to a lot of anti-Semites for my book, including the big leaders. They don't talk like that. They don't sit with me. Richard Spencer wouldn't sit me down and be like, you're responsible for the pandemics in the world. It would not happen. So it's kind of funny how even in that culture, you have the people who are complete mouth breathers. And the other ones who are like, oh God, just can you shut up? You're making us Nazis look bad. It's embarrassing. I know we have lower verbal IQ, but this is really low. So Kim Il-sung, the great leader, sits down Kim Jong-il, and he says, you're old. You gotta get married. And he's like, Dad, I got a lot of work. He's like, yeah, cool. You're marrying my secretary. And he's like, right. So he's a bigamist. He marries her. He had 2 families. And there was 3 or 4 other possible wives throughout his life. The point is, Kim Jong-nam, the eldest son, was the one who was allegedly caught in Japan. They said he was caught to go to Disneyland. That was a lie. I cover this. But he was going to be the successor. And then he was released to the public. So to have a public acknowledgement of Kim Jong Il's son, is kind of like, oh my God, this is a huge deal. And then because he got caught, because he wanted to denuclearize, he was an environmentalist and many other reasons, Kim Jong Il's like, and he's like, look at China. China liberalized, that could be us. And he goes, and Kim Jong Il's like, Chinese answers for Chinese. We're Koreans. So the thing is, there is evil. Why is it? I hate it when it gets blurry. There is an evil woman behind the scenes. That's Kim Kyung-wi, who is Kim Jong Il's sister. Who her husband was that so-called uncle who was driven to suicide. Who was killed. She drove her daughter to suicide for marrying someone who she didn't approve of. This really, really evil woman. So they had Kim Jong Nam, the third. Kim Jong Chol, we could talk about in the book. He's not in the cards. And they're like, she's going to be behind the scenes. She'll be kind of the power behind the throne. That is real. And it'll be an easy succession. So when Kim Jong-un was unveiled, my friend Ed, who preceded me to North Korea, was there in Kim Il-sung Square, April 15th, whatever day that was. And it was, and no one, he came out of nowhere. Western sources, the South Korean sources didn't know about this kid. They're like, everyone's like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? So he takes over. But that's the thing. There is no one in place to take over. You can't ask what happens if you die. And it could be a million different scenarios. Kim Jong-un has at least 2 kids. Dennis Rodman said so. He's in a position to know. Could you have a 5-year-old and then the military is basically being the regents? Possibly. As a figure, could you take some random person and pretend this is Kim Jong-il's son? Possibly. Could you say, Kim Jong-un was assassinated by the U.S. imperialists, so now we're having a full-blown military dictatorship? Possibly. I mean, these are all very, very plausible scenarios. But the premise, someone's like, oh, China's just going to invade. Why? What? If Mexico collapsed, are we going to make it our colony? They don't speak Chinese. They don't want 22 million people who've never seen a computer be have their problem. They're going to lock down that border, and you couldn't blame them. At the same time, they don't want a U.S. colony right on their border in Manchuria. So these are things that you need to, I think, understand. If you had the powers of Superman, what would you do? That's a good question. I'd travel the world a lot. I think I'd see cool places. Bottom the sea. I wouldn't be. I would. I'd probably fight some crime. Like people who are like really evil, I might take them out. Like people who are like have other people captive and like raping them for years. Like I might do something to them. Or people who play their music loud in the subway. If my heat vision causes them to burst into fire, I'm just saying. Hold on, I missed a couple. Hold on a second. Okay. So have you heard that Mormons are crypto Jews? It's my favorite conspiracy in the alt-right. Yeah, a lot of the thing that's really funny is, as I cover in the New Right, the definition of a Jew is someone I don't like. So if someone is unambiguously not Jewish, and this is certain segments of the alt-right, to be fair, they're like, oh, well, he's a crypto Jew. It's like, then what does that word even mean to you? Other than someone I don't like, it just means the same thing as a racist. It's like, oh, well, he's Jewish. It's like, but he's not. Well, this Pax Dickinson said this to me. They called him Jewish. It's like, because his eyes are too close together. That's the tell. It's like, is that the thing? That's never been a thing. So when you have this kind of, you start with the conclusion and reason your way backwards. And if you're starting with the premise, everything is a function of Jews, and you see someone who's doing something bad, well, by definition, everything's a function of Jews, so he has to be Jewish. It's just logic, right? But again, even that kind of thinking is not, to the point of the individual, is not universal among Nazis or racists. I don't think it takes a lot for for even many racists to be like, there's no good examples of this group. They'll say, sure, there's a few, I don't want them near me, but they're not. It's very hard to say it's universal. For centuries, no more make Greg great again. In all seriousness, thanks for the expert we need in these times. Here's 10 books worth, Michael. Here, thank you so much, Greg, for the continued support. And this is. I think I saw this is it's just fun because knowing who's reading Sky Adams was just talking about my thread on his coffee show today, to be in a position where I can just provide information and knowledge about this awful, awful place is the reason I took on this project is because I said, okay, if I think we have it really good in America, if I move the needle here, it's not going to matter. But in terms of cost benefit, if I move the needle there, and in our terms, our perception of there, I could really be making a profound positive difference, and that has happened, and it's extremely rewarding. I think I saw you on Rogan, saw the thumbnail. Sup? Yeah, I've been on 4 times, and I had a great time every single time I was there. Um, uh, okay, so Luke, Malice is your father. Is that true? Is that really true? Okay. Mike messed up and is making your voice deep. Oh, it does that sometimes. I like that. It's funny. I don't know why that happens. I could. I think it'll go away. Should I? Okay, I'll unplug it and replug it. I've never done that. Let's see what happens. Okay, wait. Now it should work, right? Is it working now? I used it on I'm using uh, the webcam's mic. Okay, I'm using the webcam's mic. So, okay. Working. Thank you, Charlie. Um, okay, so that is that. I don't know that I really had any. If anyone else has any, okay, audio's working now. Thank you, Eddie. Um, if that is, I think that's basically what I wanted to cover vis-a-vis North Korea. I don't know if I have anything else to discuss in that context. What I wanted to say is, again, I'll do another stream this weekend, and that one is either going to be with a guest, we're going to have a convo, or we'll be watching movies together, the Ayn Rand appearance on Donahue specifically. Thank you, Alan. If you go to malice.locals.com, you can keep up with all this. Huge fan. What does the U.S. mean when they say they have contingency plans if Kim Jong-un dies? Any chance of liberalization under his sister? Yes, the sister's the head of... I'm begging you. I am begging you all to stop thinking about the sister as like the automatic fallback, because she's the only other person we know about, but that doesn't mean anything. So please stop thinking in these terms. It's not a Mike Pence situation. Contingency plans. They mean is the leader goes and there is no organic successor and things go to pot. We got to be worried about a country with nukes and the fourth biggest military on earth and getting people fed, and they've had no information about the outside world. And China's going to be extending their sphere of influence, and possibly Putin. They share a small border with North Korea. So these are things we have to, and getting people fed, infrastructure. We're talking about a collapse, possibly of a total, autocratic dictatorship. This could get very bad very quickly. So that's what they mean. Thank you, Matthew, for all the ongoing support. Okay, so that was that. I'll have updates for the weekend streams on malice.locals.com. I wanted to get this out of the way. I'm going to go do some reading. I hope this was in use. I'm going to leave this up for people to watch if they want to, and if not, that's cool too. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the weekend at malice.locals.com. Thank you very much. You are welcome. You're still not my real dad. Yeah, here.